And we're working. Work, 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 work. Welcome back. Hope you're having a good day. Figure before I move on to the bigger trees, I was gonna go ahead and just kind of show you these cuttings that I took in May. I forgot to get any pictures of them when I got started, but I'll see if I can't dig up maybe a quick snap of when I took them from a video. See if I can do something like that real quick. This one actually came off of the tree I'm going to work on second today, the last one I'm going to look at. And this one came off a different tree that I'm not going to work today. I'm letting that one just kind of grow out for a little while. You know, I obviously watch other people's YouTube channels to try to gather up some ideas for myself. I sure do wish I was better at animations or even just was a better artist, but sometimes it's easier to kind of explain what it is I mean with a little bit of a picture. When I take these cuttings, I bury them deep enough so that the trunk is steady within the soil line, but then you wind up with the roots kind of being well below the soil line. And what I've kind of done in the past is allowed them to just kind of grow unchecked for a long time. And then when I go to repot, obviously try to pot them up a little bit higher. But these two, I've even, like, you know, off camera, obviously, I've even tried to like raise them up a little bit slowly. I'll show you what I mean here in a second with the real trees. But I'm going to try to lift them both up a little bit today, try to get their roots a little bit closer to the soil line without doing a complete repot, and allow them to go ahead and develop a little bit further inside these little pots. Let's take a look. All right, so when I first took it, I actually put it in deep enough to where this branch and this branch, if you will, were both resting on the side of the dish I've got it in. This is actually leftover from one of those little wick pots from like a self-watering plant. But what I've been doing, I've been able to kind of lift it up. For some reason, it keeps kind of falling over a little bit on this side. I mean, you can see I've got quite a little bit of room there. I haven't messed with it for a little while. I think I've explained before, since school started this year, I've been really busy. Try to pick it up a little and then just try to, I mean, first off, this is how well rooted they are. I mean, this is since May. I mean, I don't even feel it moving with that much movement there. So as I just try to pick it up some, I'm going to try to take some of the outer substrate that does not have any roots in it and kind of get it like underneath. And try to get the nabari up a little higher. I mean, it's too young to really have much of one yet, but trying to get it to where I can develop it a little more in this little pot without having to, you know, when you do a full repot, it's kind of like open heart surgery where you're really, you know, disturbing it quite a bit. I'm trying to disturb as few roots as possible, just get some more substrate up under the roots. And you can see how much higher I've got it in the pot now. Still don't really see too much of a surface coming out there. But that lets me know, you know, see now actually if I went to go hold it like that, it just barely holds on. I can actually feel some movement now. So I'll just leave it like that for a little while. I might do that one more time over the winter. Just try to get it up a little bit higher in the pot. Probably plan on repotting it next spring. We'll see what happens. I hate to even... I'm leaving all the growth I can. This growth right here is really in a bad spot, but I'm still going to leave it. I want to thicken it up as much as possible. We'll see what happens, see what it looks like next spring. This one I had quite a bit deeper in the pot. I actually had it leaning up against the side, and throughout time, you know, just since May, I've been just kind of picking it up straighter, but now I'm going to try to get it maybe a little bit higher in the pot. I have a little cup of soil ready here. If I can get it to just kind of lift up out of here all in one piece, I may pour a little bit just down, pour a little bit of that under it, again, just to get a little bit up higher in the pot, and then I should be able to let it develop in this pot a little bit longer. So let's see. Again, good and solid in there. I was going to see if maybe it would come up in one solid chunk. And so I just want to get it just a little bit higher in there if I could. There we go. And there we go, without disturbing much. It's now got like another inch of substrate to kind of venture out into down there. All right, this is the second one I want to look at today, or I guess the third if you count those cuttings of two. I repotted this in June, and today I was planning on trying to get rid of as much of this straight up growth as I can. This is the worst branch for it, in that it just has a pretty good thick branch coming out there, and then straight up growth. I was going to take, some of this straight up growth and try to leave some of the growing tips that were growing, the way you would want them to, and also try to induce some back budding, things like that. But I was going to leave the wire on, and I was about to say that this one of the best things about all this extra work I've taken on at school is that I've actually been, a little more prone to leaving my trees grow a little more, getting them to develop a little more without, messing with them constantly. I think sometimes that's one of the mistakes I make. I think that's one of the mistakes a lot of bonsai people make, is they just kind of mess with them a little bit too much. As I've been looking at this and thinking about this video today, the main thing I wanted to work on is actually the next tree I'm bringing in. But I've been looking at basically the top two wires here, and they're not cutting in too bad. This one too. And so I've been thinking, I'll just go ahead and do that pruning and leave the wire on for a little bit longer, let it back bud a little with the wire on. And even a couple of these pieces here where you can see it goes from the original tree into some new sprouts. You can see it was actually, you might be able to see that, where it was actually wrapped really loosely. But then today when I go to do it, I realize that the bottom branches and even the next set is really biting in. So I'm going to take the wire off too. But I think since the branches are so defined and I can see them so well, I'm going to go ahead and do the pruning I was talking about first. This one's like as far as, useful growth is decent enough. I'm going to take it down to where it's just one growing tip there. And it's a growing tip that's not growing straight up. I have no plans to completely defoliate it, but I am going to take off maybe some of the bigger and yellowing leaves that I see still on there. This branch, you can see, it has that straight up growth. I actually read an article not too long ago that said that ficus don't have the ability to turn their leaves towards the sun. And maybe the individual leaves don't actually turn towards the sun, but the branch sure will. And if you go back and look at this past video, I have this all on a playlist. If you go back and look at this past video, it's definitely turned towards the sun quite a bit. Take off some of this straight up growth too. And just work my way around here. I'll leave both those growing tips just because there's not that much growth on that branch. And then there's this guy. Of course, I don't want any of that. And then this piece here is like growing back into the tree some. You don't really want that. But I'm going to go ahead and just cut off the one I really don't want and see what happens here. This one might straighten out over time or just become maybe a little more useful as it kind of grows and gets rid of the stumps there and everything. Cut that off. And then, like I said, this one's one of the worst ones. It really would be the worst one as far as just the straight up growth. It would be the third branch up. And they're kind of at decent thicknesses. This one, I don't think I mentioned it right when I got started. This was a tree that was a root over rock that was just like looking awful. I pulled it off of it and got it repotted nicely. It got really beat up in the hurricane. Like I said, these are in a playlist if you want to go back and look at the whole thing. But it's turning out really well now. I think this will be a nice tree at some point. Got a nice flat pot here. Allow this. I'm going to work on the Nabari only for a little bit. I'll be taking this wire off and just leaving it like that for the winter. What I'm going to do here is just go ahead. I'm going to cut everything off. Leave that one leaf. Try not to disturb that one leaf when I when I take the wire off and hope it gets some growth there. I hope it just doesn't give up on that branch. I've actually had that happen before where I've cut off too much in one point and the tree just decides, you know, like that branch is not really providing any nutrition, so it just kind of like lets it die off. I mean, of course, not with a functioning brain, it just happens. And then I notice on some of my, I know that what I do a lot is I'll cut the whole apex off and leave a growing tip, and then it just kind of keeps kind of flowing out of that growing tip some, and I wind up with good movement, but I'll wind up with no branching that ever comes out in the movement. So this one I'm actually going to cut a little lower than I usually would. Try something slightly new. All right, a little closer look. Go ahead and pull this wire off. All right, that's my first time trying to demonstrate some magic. Got the wires off there. If it was spring, I'd really consider cutting all this green off. I wouldn't even be doing this harsh of a pruning today if I didn't live in Florida. Sometimes I forget to mention that. But we do have several weeks of growing season left. Everything around here really does continue to grow at least through Thanksgiving, so this has plenty of chance to recover. As a matter of fact, once I see it start to back bud, especially if it starts really back budding towards the trunk, I may go ahead and cut all these ends off just a little bit more. Just kind of doing this just in case, since it was just repotted. And see if you guys can see a little bit better there where some of this stuff was cutting in a little bit. Odd that it wasn't really happening too much in the couple wires in the apex. Usually these trees will start cutting in there first, but alright, and here's the last one I'm going to work on for today. If you want to go back and look through the playlist, I'll go ahead and you can see some of the history of it. I will show you this one picture just because it's kind of amazing how quickly this has progressed since January of 2020. I did allow a sacrifice branch, and this scar right there, that's how I got it kind of developed as quickly as I did. And maybe I left that in just a little bit too long because now I've got that huge scar there. Sometimes I do think about taking that bottom branch off and trying to develop like this, simply because that bottom branch shouldn't be skinnier than the second branch. I mean, that's the idea that we try to go with. So today when I'm going to get some wire on it, I'm going to leave as much growth as I possibly could on this branch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait until I'm hoping that this branch continues to help heal that scar up. Let's see if I can give you guys a closer look there. Once that scar is all the way healed up, I may go ahead and decide to take that branch off, but I'm going to wait until it is either completely healed up or kind of looking like a hollow rather than just a huge scar like it looks like right now. I do have this side, which I find this side I'm a little undecided as to a front. I do have this side here with several possible hollows and scars, and I think that does give a tree character. But at one point, and I still may, and that would be go back to this side here, where this side actually has a cleaner look to it and doesn't have all those scars. We'll just see what happens in the future. Maybe I'll start thinking a little more about how I'm going to leave these things kind of permanently once I get a little closer to death or something. I still feel like I got a few years left in me, so I'm just going to continue to develop them. I have no desire to try to sell any or anything like that. I just like to watch them grow. Now this is what I was talking about with the apex, in that I have been steadily chopping this guy back, and I'm just been kind of like chopping it back and leaving like the last one, and then it'll keep going, but then it doesn't get any back budding along and through there. So actually right now I'm going to start with, even though it's got a little bit of an interesting scar already healing a little there, I'm going to take this whole part off here. And the hopes is that since it is apically dominant, and I did such a big chop there, that it will actually maybe sprout a couple branches here and there, and then start to build that apex a little bit closer to the rest of the tree instead of just having a big, gap between an apex there. And then I am going to cut everything else back pretty hard and get wire on everything. And like I said, I will get wire on this one, but I'm going to leave all that growth just in the interest of trying to keep that momentum going there and try to get that scar healed up a little bit better / quicker. It's funny, as I work my way around to this side, I forgot that I wanted to leave as much growth as possible over there. Started kind of taking out a couple of those pieces there. I'm going to get a couple of these straight up ones. I'm glad I caught myself there and leave the rest. Some of this growth that I leave, it's not because I'm worried about it back budding like a Benjamin tree may not, but I've done this before where I've cut everything off, and then all the back budding I get is just straight up off the trunk, and I wind up with that kind of goofy look with just all the branches coming straight up off of the thicker pieces. So while I do want to cut it back for taper, I also want to continue some of the growth out where I want it instead of just getting a bunch of back budding coming straight up off the tree. You know, that magic I did earlier worked so well, I'm going to try it again. Alright, and we'll let it ride out the winter like that. Got all that growth still out here. Hopefully that scar starts to heal up a little bit better than it has been. I mean, it's been healing fine, but I'd like for it to finally close up so I can decide if I'm going to keep that branch or not and kind of work with it the rest of the way up. It's been about 2 years in this pot. Probably get into something new soon, maybe next spring. Have to see how much time I have and what it looks like.